What's good, my broskies? So you're telling me you're still a noob at Wings of Duty after all of these videos? Well, that's why this video is out here for you, bros, because this is how not to be a noob at Gunship Sequel 2020 edition. So stay tuned for this. We're going to go over how to take off, how to land, carrier takeoffs, carrier landings, ground attacking, with strafing, rockets, bombs, and we'll also be going over the basics of dogfighting, just some general tips, and then we'll go over night fighting as well, just some general tips as well. So before taking off, the first thing you want to do is familiarize yourself with the location of the speedometer, your altimeter, and your fuel gauge. Once you know where those are, apply 20 to 30% throttle and navigate yourself on the runway using your rudder. Once you're on the runway, max out your throttle and use the rudder to keep you on the runway so that you don't flip over, roll over, or just go off course. And once you hit about 200, 250 kilometers per hour, just pull up very slightly, let the plane do it for you, and you should put yourself in the air. Common mistakes are people pulling up too early, not using their rudder to steady themselves while taking off, and those usually result in crashes. So make sure that you get enough speed and you just barely put in a little bit of elevator pitch, just so you can just slightly take off the ground. Once you're off the ground, you should be pretty set to go. Make sure you get some speed before pulling any maneuvers. Secondly, just a basic tip is some people like to put in 50% flaps when taking off. This will help you get some more altitude, and it'll also keep the takeoff a little bit more steady. I personally don't do it with flaps just because I think it kills a lot of speed, but you can if you'd like to, and it can be helpful for new players. Now let's take a look at the carrier takeoffs. With the carrier takeoff, it's pretty much the same concept. Familiarize yourself with all the controls. Put in left rudder before applying the throttle, or whichever way you need to go. Once you've lined yourself up with the runway strip, go ahead and just max out that throttle. Use the rudder to keep you in line with the runway. You don't want to crash into the ship or go off or go overboard until you're ready to take off. Then once you throw yourself over the edge, immediately retract the gears and keep yourself steady until you get some speed. Once you get some speed, then you can start turning. Now onto landings. What you want to do is you want to reduce your throttle, slow yourself down to about 250 200 kilometers per hour. You can do that easily by deploying your flaps, reducing throttle, and putting your gears out. Gears will they'll deploy once you're about in that speed range, and then from there you just want to slightly land on the ground with your rear wheels so you don't nosedive. Once you hit the ground, go ahead and use your rudder to center yourself on the runway so you don't go off course, and just slow yourself down using your flaps. Once you've slowed down enough, you're going to want to head off the runway, get into the grass area or the snow area or whatever map you're on, and then halt the plane so that you can repair and reload. Now before we get to carrier landings, I want to talk about a few common mistakes. Sometimes people go too fast and they'll overshoot the runway, so you got to make sure you're going slow enough to the point to where the gears will deploy. Secondly, you don't want to strike the ground when you're landing. You want to make sure you're almost level with the ground even before landing, so you don't want to nosedive into the ground. And then you want to make sure that you keep the phone very steady so that you don't roll over or anything like that. For carrier landings, it's a little bit different. The only difference is that you got to deploy the hook. So if your plane does not have a hook, you cannot really land on a carrier. It's possible, but it's not likely that you'll be able to pull it off, and it should only be reserved for emergencies only, because otherwise you could blow up the ship. So anyways, you want to go ahead and deploy your gears, deploy your hook, make sure you're going slow enough, and then just align yourself up with the runway. That's the most important part. And you want to make sure that you land pretty smoothly. And what the hook will do is it's going to lock onto a cable, and it's going to immediately slow down your plane, and you're going to be able to land with probably easier than regularly. And there you have it. That's how you do a carrier landing. So the next part of this lesson is ground attacking. Ground attacking can be very fun, very simple, and a lot easier than dogfighting. There's just a few things you have to keep in mind. So the first thing to keep in mind is know what ammo damages what. I know with the 12.7s that I have here, I'm not able to damage those heavily armored tanks, but I am able to take out the light vehicles here. So those should be no problem. When I shoot them, they should instantly blow up. But when I shoot the heavily armored tank, absolutely no damage to it, as you can see there. So that'll come with experience. By trial and error, you'll know what you'll be able to damage and what you won't be able to. The second thing you want to keep in mind is dodging a flak. There's going to be a lot of flak when you're ground attacking, so you got to know how to dodge it. And the most effective way to do that is by keeping your speed up and by just kind of rocking back and forth, making it hard for the flak to predict where you're going to be next. Don't just fly in straight lines, and don't just do flat turns around it, because that can be very dangerous. If you're going to turn around, I'd recommend doing it out of range of the flak. So now we're going to come back and we're going to finish off the remaining vehicles. But unfortunately, it won't be enough damage to give us the objective. But we want to complete this objective, so we're going to have to wait for the IL-2s to show up. But as you can see, all the light vehicles are destroyed. So we're going to have to wait for IL-2s to show up to take out those flak tanks, and then we should be alright. In the meantime, let's take a look at the SBD dauntless and learn how to dive bomb. Dive bombing is a very effective way of getting some nice precision bombs on your target. In this case, we're going to be dive bombing some carriers here. Carriers are a lot easier to hit than destroyers, so I'd recommend practicing on them, but typically I'd go for destroyers first because you'll land more kills and they're also easier to destroy. So you want to use that thing below you to spot the target. Once you're about 90 degrees above the target, you want to go ahead and invert yourself, kill the throttle, put on your flaps, and pull towards the carrier or whatever. Make sure that you're right above it, and then once you're pretty close to it, you're going to want to drop your bombs. So we're going to head and drop both of our bombs here. We're going to immediately put our throttle back up and just pull out of there. You definitely don't want to ram into the ship because you will destroy yourself. But before we begin with our second run, let's check on those IL-2s and see how they're doing. Alright, so the IL-2 is coming in now, and we have the rockets equipped. I would be bombing those targets typically, but I got rockets, and we're going to use them because you guys need to learn how to use rockets if you're going to get an IL-2 or something like that. So with rockets, there's a few things to keep in mind as well. You got to hit the target pretty directly, and it's just really good for taking out armored tanks and such. But if you don't hit the target directly, you're not really going to do any damage to it. So make sure you don't miss. And keep in mind that the rockets might not be affected by gravity, but they're definitely affected by lead in this game. So you got to make sure that you aim a little bit below the targets when you're diving on them. In this case, I'm going to miss here because I aimed a little bit too high. I should have aimed a lot lower. I should have got a lot closer. For the second run here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to angle myself so that I can just hit both the targets in one run. And I'm going to go ahead and get on I'm going to get more on their level, more on their altitude, because I don't want such a steep angle because it's much harder to lead with the rockets then. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lower myself here, be a little bit more in line with them, and I'm going to aim slightly below and slightly to the left of the target because I know the rocket's going to come off my right wing. So we're going to fire here, and now we're going to do the exact opposite, fire a little bit to the right of that one, and we have both of those hit. And you can kind of see how I led a little bit. That'll come with practice. Just know where the rocket's going to go and just making sure you hit the target directly. But objectives complete. Very successful run. We got a 700 XP bonus. But let's go finish up on that dive bomber. So as I said earlier, I like to use this thing to spot the ships. You don't have to use it if you want, but I think that's what it's there for. But as you can see, we saw the carrier there. So I'm just going to make sure I get over the carrier first. This way we're going to do a little bit differently. I don't like doing this way as much, but it definitely works. Go ahead and just pull yourself down like that. Only problem with this method is that you're going to definitely over-G yourself by pulling way too many negative Gs. But sometimes it's easier for people than going inverted and such, because a lot of times they'll go too stiff and they'll ram into the ships. But it's up to you how you decide to do it. But make sure you're close to the target when you bomb it so that there's no chance of you missing. Alright guys, so now I'm going to give you guys some general dogfighting tips. I have several videos on how to dogfight, which I might include some of them here. But I'm going to go over some maneuvers in a different video, maybe like my top 5 maneuvers or something. But for now, I'm just going to give general dogfighting advice, because otherwise it would take forever to go over every maneuver. The first tip I want to give you guys is always have the altitude advantage. Altitude is almost like a lifeline in Wings of Duty. If you have altitude, you have potential energy to run away from opponents, to catch up with opponents, to turn, whatever you got to do. It's almost like a currency in the game, and you got to be able to spend your altitude effectively. And what you're trading altitude for is speed. Speed is important because it's a matter of whether you catch up to the opponent or not, whether you outrun the opponent or not, whether you have enough energy to make that turn without stalling out, whether you have enough energy to climb up to the opponent without stalling out. Speed is very important. So you got to keep your altitude and speed in mind at all times, and you want to make sure that you use both very conservatively and very efficiently, because otherwise you're going to lose yourself a lot of dogfights. My second tip for you is knowing how to lead your targets. Guys, bullets are not laser beams. They don't just hit the target instantly. It takes time for them to get where they're going, and the farther away they are, the longer it's going to take for the bullet to get there. So you got to be able to predict where the opponent's going to be and being able to hit them. Also, keep in mind that the bullets are affected by gravity, so you have to aim a little bit or slightly above your target when they're especially far away from you. One great method for leading your targets is by utilizing deflection shots, or basically letting the opponent run straight into the bullets. In order to hit a perfect deflection shot, what you must do is predict where your target is going to be. Once you have that prediction in mind, aim slightly in front of the prediction to give yourself some margin of error room. So even if you're wrong, you'll still have the opportunity to hit them. Just make sure you don't fall short of the prediction. Always exaggerate the lead. From there, hold down the trigger until the opponent flies straight through the bullets, and hopefully you'll hit the target and get the kill. My last tip out there for you broskies is learn some maneuvers. Now I'm going to make a video showing some maneuvers for you, but there's other ways to learn maneuvers. You can join the Discord community, you can ask other players in the game to show you some maneuvers, but basically what I'm getting at this is don't just turn with every plane, because when you just turn fight everything, there's going to be a lot of cases where you're not going to win. You got to learn how to utilize your energy to your advantage so to guarantee yourself a victory, because turn fights can be gambles all the time. And there's certain planes that you do want to turn with, but a lot of planes out there you don't want to turn with. So know what plane to turn with, know what plane not to turn with, and if you can't turn with that plane, know how to, know something else to do, whether it's boom and zoom, whether you're going to scissor fight them. You have a lot of options out there, and turn fighting is not always the best option, even for planes that excel at turning. So if you're one of those players who finds yourself turning in every dogfight and losing, then maybe you should consider trying something else. A good rule of thumb is turn with the Japanese planes, turn with the British planes, turn with the Russian planes, and then don't turn with the German or American planes. But even then, there's still some planes in those tech trees that you might want to turn with or might not want to turn with. Just play around with your plane, see what works for it. If your plane's fast, turning's not going to be the best thing for you. It's going to be utilizing your speed to hit the target and run out of there. If your plane's slow, perhaps turning is what you need, just because you'll be able to stay on your target at 6 o'clock. If your plane can go very slow and manage to fly relatively well at low speeds, try scissor fighting. Try forcing your opponent to overshoot you and then taking advantage of that situation to get the kill. Another thing to keep in mind is if your plane is durable and you have heavy armament, maybe try going for some head-on-head attacks. Just make sure you don't ram the opponent. So what you should take away from this is there's a lot of options when it comes to dogfighting, and you shouldn't always go straight into a turn fight with every fight. You should think about all the options you have and then pick the best one, but you want to make up your mind pretty quick, because dogfights can be over in an instant if you're not careful. Okay, so lastly for this guide is basic tips for night fighting. I don't think I've ever covered night fighting on this channel. I know I have some night fighting videos, but not any guides for it. Night fighting is extremely difficult because you can't see anything. But there's some ways that you can utilize your environment outside of the game to help you see. And typically what I do is I just turn off all the lights, and then you can pretty much see it's almost day. But even then, it's still a little tough. That's just something to think about. Wouldn't really recommend it. It's probably not too great for your eyes. But at least for the Battle of Britain map or any other map, the higher in the sky you are, the harder you are to see, because the black silhouette of your plane is going to blend in with the black sky, and it will not blend in with the ocean or the ice or grass. So if you're above your opponent, chances are they're not even going to see you, and you can just dive on them, like in this situation, and get them from behind when they're not even looking. And to be honest, I can't even see them in the video here. I can a little bit. Now you can kind of see them glisten. But you get what I'm saying. And make sure you don't lose the target, because once they turn away like that, it's going to be very hard to find them. Maybe you shouldn't turn how I did there. You should just instantly pull back up, get that altitude advantage, and then look for the silhouette again like you did last time. Luckily, he ejected, and we got the kill. So now let's move on to the next victim. We're going to do the same tactic here where we're above the opponent, just looking, scanning the sea for anything, and hopefully no one's going to be above us, which in this case there isn't. Looks like we spot someone here. I can't really see him on my screen, but I'm sure in the game I definitely saw him. And we're going to go ahead and just roll over again like this and just get him by surprise. Night fighting is a great opportunity for you to surprise attack planes, because they just can't see you if you're above them. Make sure to get close to them before taking shots. A lot of people shoot way too early when they have the sneak attack. But if you have the sneak advantage, you want to be able to take them out before they can react. And if that involves missing, because the tracers are going to be pretty bright to them, then you don't want to miss, because they'll just turn out of the way. But luckily we got him here, and that was a pretty epic night fight, I guess. But anyways, broskies, if this video helped you, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you're new, for more Wings of Duty, War Thunder, aviation content, maybe just even broski content. Enjoy the bros community. We have a Discord link in the description. Go ahead and check it out. Leave suggestions in the comments below. Let me know what you thought. And I'll see you guys in the next video, stream, or whatever I do.